So I'm looking at the law because there's things that the law does and things that the law doesn't do. There's nothing in the law that says that you are not allowed to vote if you are of a particular color. There's nothing in the law that says this. So I've been reading it and I've linked it before. By the way, it's also, if you follow me on social media, like for instance, Twitter, I have it linked up there and you can actually read it for yourself. You don't need to, take my word for it. You can read it for yourself. But this law, when I'm looking over it, the big changes are this. The early voting is expanded and the emergency procedures that were put into place to assist people in voting, those were, that was not added to the state constitution. And these were things that people did not have prior, they did not have previously. It's like in Georgia, when Georgia decided to make the drop boxes and that part of their state constitution so that that would be covered by law. But there are a lot of people that clearly have not even read this thing. Now, there are 9 hours a day of early voting during the early voting period. So that's what is changed. And I'm looking, and when you look at this, the link that I gave you, the site, all of the changes, they have the changes highlighted in different colors. And so you can actually see what was added. You can see things that have been that were struck, etc. And so during the early voting period, there are 9 hours a day. It was expanded to 9 hours a day, and it requires 12 hours a day. The last week of early voting in large counties, and they get into all of the measurements of this later on in the bill. And all of this that's 12 hours. I mean, this is, they act like that people are being grandfathered, or that people are being disenfranchised because they're not like quasi grandfathering in the emergency way that people voted with the drive up voting and all of that stuff. That was a one and done. Because there was a lockdown. You don't need to do that apart from you don't need to do that without a lockdown, which then brings up the question, is that why we're hearing so much fear mongering about the Delta variant? But I digress. No one's being deprived of the right to vote. That's insane. So people are actually arguing, well, those brand new protocols that we had to vote during lockdown, and now because we're not in a lockdown anymore, those brand new protocols that we only had for the first time ever during lockdown, they're being taken away. We're totally being blocked from voting. That's the Democrats' argument. I'm not even kidding you. That's their argument with us. It's the goofiest thing ever. So you have additional expanded voting. And on top of this too, I actually think that I'm not entirely happy with the bill because I don't really think that we needed to have expanded voting hours. The voting period can start as early as 6 a.m. And this was something else that the bill got into, is that it was normalizing the start times and all of this stuff across the state. So it can start, it can start as early as 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. And they have the hours that are set. This particular piece of legislation has more specificity as to the times than the well, not really current, but previous law did. You have to have 12 hours a day, as I just said, last week of early voting. And the new hours for early voting, local officials are not allowed to offer early voting overnight because Democrats wanted 24-hour voting. And we talked to Texas Governor Greg Abbott yesterday. That's what Harris County did by themselves, and that's why there was legal action. They decided to do that by themselves, offer 24-hour voting. Why? You don't need 24-hour voting. We had days of early voting. I have one of the craziest schedules in the world. It is impossible for me to even just go to doctor's appointments or to go to the dentist because of my insane hours. I find time to go and early vote. I mean, for goodness sake, Stephen Yates, who's on a plane constantly, he finds time. I mean, there's just, I actually thought they expanded it too much, but they wanted a 24-hour vote. That's what they wanted. And then furthermore, they're not doing the drive-through voting anymore because that was only for the pandemic and the lockdown. If you're voting absentee, which we always had, we had signature matching, you have to have identification for absentee. And officials cannot send out unsolicited absentee ballots to people who are ineligible to vote absentee. The elections board, you have to be granted the ability to vote absentee. My son had to do it. My oldest son, he voted absentee. He went through that whole process. I get it. I don't oppose it. Was he disenfranchised because he had to? No, that's so stupid.